This is E&P Reports, a service of Editor and Publisher magazine. Since 1884, the authoritative voice of news publishing. And sponsored this week by IQ Audience Plus by Town News. Consumer revenue has never been more important. Digital leaders at media organizations worldwide are asking the same question. How do we accelerate the growth of consumer revenue? Traditional one-size-fits-all paywalls aren't the answer. They're blunt instruments that treat all visitors the same way, costing you money. IQ Audience Plus by Town News is a smart, dynamic metering solution that empowers you to maximize revenue by identifying key audiences, seeding engagement, and growing membership and subscriptions. Ready to supercharge your consumer revenue, grow engagement, and bolster your advertising income? Visit townnews.com/EP today to learn more about IQ Audience Plus. And greetings once again. I'm Mike Blinder, a publisher of Editor and Publisher magazine. And if you are gaining some value from the content of E&P Reports, please subscribe to the podcast channel you're listening to right now. Subscribe to us, please. And if you're on YouTube, please go to the bottom of the screen right now, click that subscribe button, hit the bell next to it, and you'll be alerted each and every time we post a new segment of E&P Reports. Marijuana, cannabis. Is it something we should be reporting more on? And is it a good revenue stream for a news publisher? Well, if you ask Berl, Schwartz, and Kaminski, the publisher and editor-in-chief of Lansing, Michigan City Pulse, their answer would be, you betcha. Because it was just 2 years ago that the state of Michigan did allow recreational use of marijuana, and right now it is a huge revenue center for the alternative weekly of Lansing, and becoming a big part of the editorial commitment as well. So let's talk cannabis on the editorial side and business side as we travel to Lansing, Michigan, as I go one-on-two with the publisher and editor-in-chief of the Lansing City Pulse.
Ready when you are.
Kyle, Berl, welcome. It's an honor to talk to you guys way up in freezing cold Lansing from down here in beautiful warm Tampa. I'm kidding. I know that the weather up there hasn't been that bad. Before we discuss our topic for today.
Oh, actually it has been.
It has been bad? Okay, there you go. Yeah. Before we get into our topic, what I really want to get into is how you guys are building audience and working in revenue with cannabis. I'd first like to get you to quickly, maybe Berl, you're the owner and publisher of City Pulse, Lansing, Michigan. You're an alternative weekly. Am I correct, sir?
We are indeed.
And
20 years this August.
How many years?
20 in August.
20 in August. Circulation, sir, if I may ask.
Well, the print circulation now has bounced back from a pandemic low of 7,800 to about 13,000 print, and the web traffic is through the roof.
All right, that's pretty cool. How did you get through COVID? I know it's hard for an alternative, especially since most of your distribution points were venues, and those venues were kind of shut down for a while. Advertising base, all that and more. Are you guys doing okay? Are you seeing a bounce now?
Absolutely. Last March and April, I would have said, hey, it's over. I can retire this fall because I won't have a job anymore. And then, thanks to terrific salesmanship, come May and June, we turned it around. And with PPP money, we actually ended up in a very positive position going into the new year.
Congratulations. That's wonderful. How many pages was your last issue, if I may ask?
32.
32.
And
Kyle, you are the editor-in-chief of an alternative weekly in Lansing, Michigan. So I assume you support Donald Trump. You lean very far to the right. I'm just kidding. Where most, if not all, except for one alternative I know of, leans more politically to the left. Am I assuming that's where you guys are when in your editorial and your slant?
Yeah, we lean a little bit to the left. Certainly not the Lansing Patriot Press or anything like that.
Okay. How are you positioned in the market against the Daily? I mean, are they more center, would you say? Or what is your niche?
I mean, our news coverage, we try to bring balance to the news coverage. I mean, our tagline is a newspaper for the rest of us. So we try to pick up stories that may be dailies and other TV stations might not pay so much attention to, kind of the longer form investigative pieces or just things that people aren't paying so much attention to that maybe they should.
Can you give me one story you've done in the past few months that just went through the roof with website traffic and got you tons of interaction with your audience? Give us an idea of what really resonated with the City Pulse reader.
Well, I'm knee deep in election coverage right now. We have two mayoral candidates who are both accused of some sexual harassment allegations and some discrimination allegations, and we broke different components of that. So we've been keeping busy with that and definitely driving our web traffic as we head into a nasty election season here in Lansing.
Let's talk about before we get into cannabis, which is a fun topic, Lansing, Michigan, the capital of Michigan, a governor that has definitely been in the news lately and was in the news for the last 4 years. You've had some interesting insurrections, if I may use that term, people storming your Capitol building or what have you. How are you covering that? What's it like there? What is the press culture like in Lansing right now?
We have a columnist who writes weekly for us on state matters, and he's a pretty straightforward reporter, but he is able to do some interpretation, and he did a really interesting column on Gretchen Whitmer this week, actually. She's getting a very hard time right now from the White House and knocking things down again because, according to the New York Times, 16 of the top 17 worst communities for COVID cases are in Michigan.
Right.
But she's up for election next year. So her approach now is pretty Republican for a liberal Democrat, which is, folks, you got to take responsibility for yourself. We can't shut things down forever. It's music to the ears of Republicans. But the argument that our columnist made in his last column is, she's on target here. That you can't go back at a certain point and shut things down, especially in a state that has really been shut down for a very long time until recently. She contends the solution is more vaccinations. Joe Biden says, we're not giving you any more vaccine. You got to shut things down. So her problem at the moment is not with the usual Republicans, it's with her own party.
Really? So she's pivoted in a way to the center.
Yeah, she has. Yeah.
In your opinion, Berl, since you are embedded in the state and the publishing community and most probably a mover and shaker in that town, was that the right political move for her? Can I get you on record for that, or did she?
I think in the long run it is. I think what we're seeing is, and the bottom line, as our columnist said, is Michigan is going to look pretty good overall nationally. What's going on right now with COVID? Yeah, it's not great. But it is not nearly as bad as it was a year ago when she did shut everything down very early. I think she's going to come out pretty well against any Republican we see on the horizon.
How's she polling right now at the time of this recording?
Well, the important thing is her approval rating, and it's still above 50%.
There you go. Can't take that. All right, let's talk pot. Let's talk cannabis. Kyle, what's the history?
My specialty.
Oh, yours, very good. That's why. Okay, full disclosure, I go way back with Berl because I have consulted your newspaper, as the Blinder Group, the company I still own and work and still have clients I consult. Been up there. Love your operation. You're always a gracious host, sir. But I subscribe to your newsletter, and it comes in, when you got, because I subscribe to all my client newsletters. You've been going full board pot, Kyle, lately. Every email I'm getting. So that's why I sought you guys out. Kyle, before we get into what you're currently doing, what's the history of cannabis in Michigan, and why has it become so forefront right now?
Well, we just saw recreational legalization 2 years ago. I'd have to double check the date. It's been a while. The industry has really taken off in those couple years since. I mean, in Lansing, we have more than 150 licensed grow operations, 28 dispensaries allowed in the city. We have 25 of them open now. Processors everywhere. It's really a boom town for the industry, and taken off. So we've been trying to keep up with the news coverage.
2 years recreational. Before that, at least, it was still available medicinal, correct? You could get it through prescription, but now it's totally recreational. Okay.
Yeah, Michigan voters approved medical in 2008 by 63%. And then it was 2018 when they approved recreational, and that was over 50. It was a solid, you'd like those numbers, 55% maybe, something like that.
So can I assume then everybody's crashing cars into buildings, nobody's attending work, the entire economy has gone to the wherewithal, and there's just a bunch of zombies walking around? Or how is the state adapted to this new recreational cannabis world up there?
Kyle, you're closer to that than I am.
I think there's a lot of hesitancy, I mean, particularly in some of the rural areas around Lansing, to embrace the industry, but there hasn't been any negative side effects. The sky is still up there. I mean, yeah, haven't heard of any big arrests, crimes, any sort of break-ins at these dispensaries. It's really, it's just been kind of a learning curve as the industry gets up and going, and really been nothing but positive news for Michigan in terms of tax revenue and good times for customers.
What is
if there's anything, it's that because of regulation, the prices are more than the street prices. And, people, a lot of people simply aren't going to pay the about 15% extra they tag on to recreational. So there's still a big black market here.
Really?
But it's, it's legal no matter, it's legal to possess it. How you get it could be a problem, but nobody's going to do anything about it here. Yeah, the history is really interesting. Like, we had as our last mayor, who's running again, a guy who just believed, let them all operate. And after medical was approved in Lansing, whose population at the time was about 112,000, we're up to about 120,000. We had an estimated 70 to 80 dispensaries in the city operating however they wanted. The word went out, the mayor told the police chief, leave them alone. And we thrived. City Pulse was identified very early on with the pro-marijuana movement. And about a year after the voters approved medical and it took effect, we started, some days we'd have 8 or 9 pages of pot advertising. Then the courts got involved and they said, the voters didn't say you could have dispensaries. And so suddenly they all but a handful were advertising because most of them closed on the advice of their lawyers. And that handful wasn't advertising. So then we lost all that revenue. But now with recreational, what we're seeing, especially this year, late last year and this year, we're starting to see it come back. The city of Lansing, now a population of 120,000, allows 28, they call them provisioning centers.
Provisioning centers.
Yeah, and most of those licenses have been given out by the city, the state. There's still some of them are still trying to get their state license. They do also have to have. But Kyle, what do we report? Maybe we've got about 24 dispensaries.
Yep, just about. I think we've reached the cap actually in terms of conditional approvals. There are 3 or 4 or 5 that haven't fully opened, but yeah, we've reached that 28 limit cap now in Lansing.
Are you? If I am interested in the pot business of Lansing, would you say, Kyle, with all modesty, you now own that brand as the editorial place to go to learn more about where the dispensaries are, the benefits, the how to do it legally, all that and more? Do you have competition for that, or because you were an advocate for it during the legislative process, have you seized that spot? And the reason I'm asking is advice for other states, other alternatives, other publishers.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the media market, the cannabis industry doesn't get a whole lot of attention from anybody else in town. So
really,
yeah, kind of by default, I think I've owned a corner of that coverage. For whatever reason, I think part of it actually might be still attached to the stigma around pot. Because I mean, my Lansing and review column, I mean, at the bottom of it, there's a tag note that says I've smoked marijuana almost every day for 10 years. I don't think that there are many professional journalists that are, willing to come out with that and treat it like any other substance. It's so yeah, I think recognizing it as a normal part of society has helped me keep coverage going as well.
And the advertising has followed, Mike. Literally, last year was the only time I've seen even one ad in the Daily, the Lansing State Journal, and why they put it in there, I have no idea. But if they're going to advertise in print, and Lansing remains a pretty good print town, they're going to advertise with City Pulse and increasingly online as well. My advice to these other publishers is embrace this for your readers. Don't do it for the advertising, but if you do a sincere job, and we've written pros and cons about marijuana in our market. It isn't it's not puffery. But if you embrace it editorially, like you should as an alt paper, then I think the advertising is going to follow.
Have you had any real negative reaction, Kyle, Berl, death threats? Hate to ask, about stuff like that. People picketing your business, anything like that?
No, the biggest thing that comes to mind is I got a letter in the mail the other day addressed to Pothead Kaminski, and someone had cut out one of my most recent product reviews and just wrote in a Sharpie marker, "Big effing deal" on the front of it. So maybe a little jealousy, I'm not sure, but no picketing out front.
This is interesting because there is a fear factor. Okay, everything is political now. This is what's so crazy about our society. Wearing a mask. I live in Florida. If you wear a mask down here, be prepared for bad looks when you go into certain businesses. I mean, half of my state does not believe there is a pandemic. And some people, my brother lives in Boston, where everything's still shut down. It's an interesting world. Everything is political. This is political, right? I mean, does a Republican actually buy marijuana? That's my question. Or is it not political? Go ahead, Berl. You were going to jump in on that one, I can see.
One of the things that makes it a little easier for us is this is a relatively liberal community. It's, this is the home of state government, the home of Michigan State University. So probably if statewide 50 to 65% of voters are in favor of marijuana, I forget the numbers here, but we're probably looking at 70%. In fact, I seem to recall that number for in the city of Lansing, about 70% of voters approve of legalized marijuana. So we don't really face a lot of resistance, and there are not a lot of Republicans in Lansing, so that helps too.
All right, so basically you're giving advice to anyone that might have an alt in a already accepted liberal market, but if you're in more, let's call it a purple area, Kyle, right. Would you still write that way? Let's say, Kyle, I'm giving you a job. You're now the writer of the Alternative Weekly in Austin, Texas. Okay, maybe like here in Tampa, my Hillsborough County went blue. Everything around it went red. Do you follow in the DMA? So there you are. You're down. Would you write the same way, Kyle? Giving you some advice to another editor.
I think I would. Push the limits. Why not? I guess I've worked in mostly liberal Democratic markets, so it's difficult to say if I was to be pushed out into GOP territory. But yeah, I wouldn't change anything. I think it's. Berl?
We put the alt. That's why alt is in front of newspaper. We're alternative in the market. We're not trying to reach, everybody who reads the Daily, and half of whom are only reading it now for obituaries. Secondly, this is, there are Republicans and there are Republicans. A lot of Republicans are libertarians at heart. And as far as they're concerned, it never should have been against the law. It's a personal choice.
Wow, but that is true. That is actually very, very true. But everything has to be.
I would like to mention, one other thing I'll mention, when we do surveys consistently, a third of our readers identify as moderate to conservative. But
seriously,
consistently, they're telling us, we may not agree with you, but we read it every week. We think it's an important read.
Excellent. All right, so let's get into the business.
To piggyback on that, I would argue it's more important to continue this coverage in a right-leaning market, because I think most Republicans could use a joint.
And there is our pull quote for today. Thank you, Kyle. And our tweet. Okay, Berl, that's great. Let's talk the business side. Did you and your sales folks have to learn some lingo so you can talk to this, to this sector of advertiser? Do you have to? Would you suggest that you read a book, go over the different ways they manufacture it so you can talk their language?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, manufacturing is really not a big, it's more interest to us on the editorial side, but they're not buying ads. It's these, the owners of what they're called in Michigan, provisioning centers with dispensaries.
Right.
The ones that, we want to show to them beyond everyone's awareness in this market that City Pulse is very pro-marijuana. Yeah, we want to make sure that they know that we know what the rules are. There are regulations. For example, we're not supposed to give prices. And
that was going to be my question. My next question was, what is a unique selling proposition to make one dispensary, provisionary, better than the other one? What are they advertising?
Yeah, well, I think that's a great question, Mike. And I think a lot of them, believe me, are investing heavily in marketing. We don't really need to tell them too much what they need to do. We just have to make space for them. The bigger ones all have marketing directors and sometimes assistant marketing directors. They know what they're doing.
There's our second pull quote. We don't have much to do, just make space for them. They know what they're doing and they know what they're marketing. That's so this is I assume it's like chicken and egg. Once 2 or 3 get in the paper, the other guy's got to join because they don't want to see them out in front without them.
We did. It was tough last year because of the pandemic. A lot of them were very nervous about spending a dime. The stores were open, but only for outside delivery. And, they feared that they weren't going to get the business they need. And it's not cheap to start a provisioning center. I mean, just the fees to the state and the city alone are quite a bit. And then, they've got the cost in a difficult time of building or fixing up the building. They've got uncertainty over how many employees do we need because it's not the operation we told regulators it was going to be because the doors are closed, everything's outside. But we did some loss leaders and to make sure we had some ads in the paper, and that has really paid off for us. We worked with them. Now that things have loosened up a lot, we are seeing that effect of, man, my competitor's in there, I better be in there.
That's great. So you did do a loss leader first. Because one of the things I love about the alternative industry, I've worked with tons of them over the years, is you are one of the print publications where the ads are just, no offense, Kyle, but the ads have just as much value as the editorial content. I mean, Kyle, you do a tremendous service to provide that wonderful, edgy editorial, but without the ads that surround it, it doesn't have the same feel. Do you know what I mean? So it's almost like, and then, correct me if I'm wrong, Berl, now that finally COVID, let's hope and pray from my mouth to whatever, is waning, your venues will open up again. And that content is critical. They're the hardest to work with, because you and I both know, Berl, over the years, a restaurant, you got to be in front of the guy the day he has the checkbook open to get paid. Right. The same thing with the venue. You better be there the day the beer comes in, because that's what he's there to pay. Right?
One nice thing about it is they're mostly dealing in cash, but that does mean you want to go pick up that money, and so it's not just sales now, it's collecting, because the check is not coming in the mail.
No, that's
it's coming in cash, and my office manager doesn't like pot, says, we just got $1,000 that smells bad.
Well, talking about the value of ads versus editorial content, I'm sure the regulations vary across the country, but in Michigan anyway, product review column is kind of a unique piece of real estate in the newspaper because there are some regulations in terms of, like Berl said, pricing. A lot of provisioning centers are hesitant to put pictures of products, but with the product review, I kind of have that editorial freedom where I can write how much I paid for it. Here's a picture of it, and it's something that the provisioning centers can't put in on their own. So the review is kind of a unique element.
And that is pure editorial, not sponsored content, not advertorial, not native. There's a million words for it now. Branded content. I could go on and on. All right. And then my final question is this. Your audience that you always promote in an alt, correct me if I'm wrong, Berl, is the affluent, educated, I want to go out and do stuff guy and gal, right? I mean, I have disposable income because if I can't rub two quarters together, I don't have enough money to go to a club or a bar or a restaurant or enjoy fine wine or, as you just said, marijuana, which is expensive because they're putting fees on it. Is that the same pitch you give to them when you're talking to them?
To
your dispensaries, I mean, are you discussing audience?
Yeah, well, I think they're pretty aware that who our audience is, but we're discussing audience, we're discussing special events because
really?
Our friend Mark Sussman out at Willamette Week, they do a grow contest every year. They couldn't do it last year because of the pandemic, but it is a huge weekend festival with live music and hundreds of growers who give the paper a ton of product to give to judges. They have hundreds of judges for this contest, but people line up to be a judge because they're going to get free product to judge. We want to do that in Lansing, and we would, that's another opportunity to partner with these owners of provisioning centers. That will be a win-win.
I just should say, for those that don't know what Willamette is, that is the Willamette Weekly, and that is in Portland, Oregon. Correct, sir?
Yes.
Which is another far right-wing town. Just kidding. All right. So basically, what the final message is here for okay, let's stay in the alternative world first. If you're an alternative and you're not focusing on this, knowing that eventually the legislation may go through, because you set the stage, Berl, right? Even before the legislation was approved, you were setting yourself up to be an advocate for it, correct? Kyle, you were publishing articles, you were doing editorial on it, and all that and more.
Before Kyle's time, he was probably in college, but or even high school.
Right. So get in the space now because it'll prove lucrative over time. If it's already there in your market, as a recreational, and you're not jumping on this, to do what Berl did, maybe do a little loss leader, offer some ads to some of them to start to build the demand. Is that what you're saying, Berl? And then make sure your editorial team follows up on this with in-depth content, correct?
I think so. I think Kyle made an excellent point that you really need the editorial content to go with it because they cannot say what a lot of people want to know in an ad. Okay, what's this going to cost? And Kyle can do that for you. On
the editorial side. Excellent. Right. Berl, if someone wants to take a look at your publication today online, I know you don't have a paywall because you're a free publication. Is it citypulse.com, sir?
It's lansingcitypulse.com. It would be citypulse.com if somebody gave me $75,000 and I could modify the URL.
You've got a URL squatter holding on to that puppy. Okay, so lansingcitypulse.com. Kyle, if someone wants to reach out to you, what is your email address, sir?
Kyle at lansingcitypulse.com.
KYLE. Berl, how do they get a hold of you?
Publisher at lansingcitypulse.com.
Honor and a pleasure, gentlemen, to have both of you on. This is a topic I think that we got to spend a little bit more time getting involved in because over the months and years to come, it seems like there's no stopping this. There's more and more and more states that are going to come on board. But the alternative industry, this could become a real big part of your revenue stream. Thank you, gentlemen. Stay healthy, stay well. Keep your eyes on the political culture up there as well. And we'll be checking back with you.
Mike, I want to say one thing.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for saving editor and publisher. It's an important institution, and without you, it might well be gone by now.
I don't know if I saved it, but we have put a lot of energy, effort, and resources into it. And I thank you very, very much, sir. #blushing. Everybody have a good day.